Hi, this is Paul Tunnah and welcome to another Health Innovators video. And today we're going back into digital health with a bit of behavioral science in there as well. So very warm welcome to Sam Oddsson from Sidekick Health.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's a pleasure to meet you.
So if you followed these interviews, you probably know I like to start with a bit of your background before we move into what you're doing as a company. And I know you're a medical doctor by background. So how do you go from being a medical doctor to being an entrepreneur and starting a digital health company?
That's a very good question, Paul. Yes, that's correct. I have a background in research and actually practicing medicine. So originally born in Iceland. After med school, I went into specialization in internal medicine and thereafter cardiology. And I was working at one of Northern Europe's largest teaching hospitals in the outpatient clinic, and becoming more and more interested in how to work more upstream. So to actually prevent illnesses and suffering instead of just being there and putting out the fires. And I sometimes kind of share the story around kind of the tipping point for me at the hospital. So it was a regular day at this very large university hospital at the outpatient clinic. And I had this patient who had cardiovascular disease and was coming for a revisit after being admitted for a heart attack, right?
Right.
And I was doing my job telling the patient, if you don't take your medication right and improve your lifestyle, you will increase the likelihood of a new heart attack by X% within Y years. And I'll never forget this moment, because after the session, I looked outside the window and I saw the patient lighting a cigarette.
Oh no.
And I looked at my computer and I saw that I had 17 more patients to see that day.
Yeah.
And my first reaction was obviously that, I sunk down in my seat and I thought, after all these years, what am I doing here? But then I realized, that the patient was much more engaged with his smartphone than it was ever with me. And it just struck me that, we need to go digital. So this was several years ago, and here we are today with Sidekick.
Yeah, and I can imagine from what you described there, what a frustrating experience as a doctor to see that happening, and probably not the only time you see that happening as well.
No, I think this is a universal problem.
Yeah.
For all healthcare providers, and I believe that this is partly explains the wind in our sails at Sidekick nowadays with our approach.
And so your inspiration for Sidekick, and we'll come on to what you do specifically in a moment, but your inspiration, I guess, was trying to get people to take better care of their own health. Is that right?
That is correct. So there is a tremendous room for improvement when it comes to patient outcomes, translating into avoiding adverse effects like unnecessary strokes and heart attacks and disease flares. When it comes to better engaging people's health behavior, we have optimized the pharmacological interventions quite well. The surgical interventions are well optimized, and the true room for improvement, in my opinion, lies in motivation, engagement, patient education. So that's on kind of the patient-facing side.
Yep.
And after working at these large hospitals, there is also a big need for optimizing workflows and treatment pathways.
As human beings, I mean, we're not great at managing our health long-term in general. We do all kinds of things that we know are not good, but we do them anyway. Why do we do that? I mean, it's a big question, but why do you think we do that?
That is a very good question, and the thing I was thinking about for some time, and then I had a eye-opening moment in some discussions with another medical doctor, Tryggvi Torgesson, who is my co-founder at Sidekick.
Right.
So at the time he was doing his degree at the Harvard School of Public Health in Boston, and he's still actually a guest lecturer at both the Harvard School of Public Health and the MIT Media Lab on this approach. And the eye-opening moment was basically that, you know, our health behavior is governed by more than one system in the brain. So if we take it, if we use that scope, and to simplify it, actually, you know, we have this emotional part of the brain,
right?
Often referred to as kind of the primitive system, and it's a very strong system. And now I'm referring to kind of the mesolimbic dopamine secreting part of the brain, right?
Yep.
Which is very strong. And then we have another system, which we label kind of the reason-based part in the prefrontal cortex. A system that's great, you know, doing, analyzing data and things like that. But the problem is that we haven't fully acknowledged, in my opinion, that many of our health behaviors are governed by the emotional part of the brain. And
right.
If you think about it, you know, who's been good at engaging us? It's been the advertisers.
Yeah.
Targeting our emotional cues, like, you know, belonging to unheard, you know, for safety. It's about these primitive things that govern us. But how was I trained as a medical doctor? I was trained to deliver facts and figures and statistics,
yep.
and quick about it.
Yep.
And the opportunity, we saw that, you know, actually, you know, we are approaching this in the wrong way, and it's actually discriminating in a sense, because, you know, when I was working at the cardiology department, you know, the easiest patients were engineers. You know, they came there with their blood pressure graphs,
right.
you know, they're on top of everything. The interviews, the 15-minute slots, right? They just went bam, bam, understood. They got better results. But what we saw in just digital therapeutics in general, there are so many platforms out there that are kind of doing the same mistake. You know, they're solutions built by engineers for other engineers. But that's not where the big problem lies. It lies in a majority of people having much lower health literacy and health numeracy and health motivation that we think. And that's why, you know, we are not seeing improvements when it comes to secondary prevention for many chronic diseases. And I've been involved in, you know, monitoring these things on a national level through registries. And it just needs, there are several reasons why we haven't been able to move the needle. One reason is just this access to people. You need interventions frequently, and that is not possible in the brick and mortar system we have today. So in a way, it's broken. But now we have a revolution going on, to say the least.
And as you say, I mean, there's a lot of digital coming into healthcare, but technology only works if people use it. And as you've outlined, you've got a very good understanding of the problem here. So tell me specifically about Sidekick Health and what your approach is, and, you know, why it's different to what you've seen elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. So we set out with specifically analyzing and identifying ways to engage people with low health literacy and low health motivation. And after several iterations, we designed the system and we did the measurements. And it's great to be here today and to share kind of the high engagement metrics, which are the foundation for the patient outcomes, which is the foundation for Sidekick growing as a business with pharma and leading payers. But if we take a step back, so I mentioned my co-founder Tryggvi, who is not only a medical doctor but also a researcher on behavioral economics and how those lessons can be applied digitally to engage people. So we have several of these, we call them behavioral pillars from behavioral economics, from social cognitive theory. There are elements from CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, in there, and all these behavior modification techniques based on different conditioning, like operant conditioning, so we have created a system that is truly patient-centric and offers a different look and feel. So it's I would say kind of the secret behind our success is that on the surface, it is colorful and light, and it even looks a bit like a game. It's not a game, but we have a lot of elements from the art of gamification in there. And we were actually really fortunate in the beginning. We got a team of developers from the gaming industry that just hit the ground running, again, trained to stimulate the dopamine secreting system in the brain, right? That keeps people, adherent to games. So that's what the patient sees. It provides this comprehensive, empowering experience with gamified patient engagement, gamified treatment adherence. There is, as we have more and more data, the algorithms are able to produce more individualization, because this is far from being a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, right? Constantly learning.
And disease-specific education, but under the hood, it's actually a totally different machine, if you will. It's thoroughly evidence-based. It's data-driven, and thoroughly clinically validated, which is an important thing for us. One of my mentors at the hospital, he used to say, in God we trust, all others must bring data.
That's a good mantra.
Good mantra. So
and how many different disease areas is this being used in now then? Because this can in theory be applied across lots of different areas, can't it?
Yeah, that is another core aspect of our approach. So when we analyze different therapeutic areas, we have a process for that. We start with, can this technology truly have an impact? Is this a patient population that we can engage? And if we engage them and nudge them into the right behaviors, will that have an impact? And for some diseases, that is the case. For others, it's not. But these iterations have resulted in a platform approach. So we actually have activities in the pipeline for more than 30 diseases.
Wow.
And some of them are in clusters, right? We have digital therapeutic programs for different cardiovascular diseases. Like there is a digital therapeutic for heart failure, coronary artery disease. And if you're doing coronary artery disease, the leap into doing peripheral artery disease is not that big. It's different, but there are some similar learnings. You're basically battling unhealthy lifestyle and atherosclerosis, be it in the coronary arteries or in your legs, right? So we have a lot of programs within cardiovascular. We have some great track record and partnerships in I&I, inflammation and immunology, and that taking steps into oncology, both our own initiatives plus working with our partners, both payers and pharma.
Yeah, very good. And are there some results you can share? Because from what you described, this is, helping to drive that right behavior change. But Some of these areas are quite tricky. Things like medicines adherence. I mean, these are very tough areas. What kind of results have you seen?
Thank you for asking this question. This is my favorite topic. So as we have evolved, I serve as kind of the chief medical officer at Sidekick, and now these are just so exciting times. Many years ago, we set out with this hypothesis that a digital intervention that can target the correct brain centers can actually have an impact. And then, following loads of iterations and testing, we are now at the point that it turns out that this hypothesis is true, and we can say that with good confidence. So we have obviously, done pilot studies, but more and more kind of clinical grade randomized controlled trials.
Yeah.
Showing that the effects on the patients can be quite significant, and then statistically significant when in different TAs, and we measure different things as well. We measure a set of variables for our cardiovascular programs, and we measure a different set of variables for our I&I programs.
Yeah.
And we have been able to show that with this approach, with having the patients digitally engaged in a digital therapeutic, that we can impact quality of life in every sense of the word, in addition to harder variables. I can name multiple examples. So we have seen, if we think along the cardiovascular risk spectrum, we've seen impact on obesity. When that was for the obesity digital therapeutic that we have, we've seen a statistically significant reduction in long-term blood sugar for type 2 diabetics, which then translates into obviously enormous value, and again, first and foremost for the patient, where that reduces atherosclerosis, meaning that we reduce unnecessary strokes and heart attacks.
Yeah.
But also for our partners, the payers and the pharma.
Yeah.
We have seen statistically significant improvements in medication adherence. It's a science of itself how to measure that. There are many ways to do that, obviously. We have seen strong impact on quality of life and anxiety and things like that, according to validated questionnaires.
Yeah.
And then we tailor our interventions and the KPIs, meaning the desired outcomes with the disease, like our work with this is in the public domain. So our work with Pfizer on IBD, inflammatory bowel disease. We had these patient interviews and healthcare provider interviews, and we found out that the concern of the patient is predominantly, fatigue and lifestyle related, quality of life related matters. It's not the white blood cell count.
Yeah.
So we have actually this week we're presenting some results at the ECCO Congress, which is the European Crohn's and Colitis Congress, the European one, where we showed these results.
That's great. I mean, you're basically developing this and viewing it almost like a medicine, isn't it? Doing clinical trials, but as well as the hard clinical endpoints you've outlined, you're also satisfying the kind of things that are really important to patients, like quality of life.
Yeah, and absolutely. And again, it's a technology that enables us to do this. Medical doctors have wanted to do this for decades, but the brick and mortar setting has not enabled us to do this. So it's interesting that you mentioned pharma, because in a way, we are a digital pharma.
Yeah.
We take our products through this 5-stage cycle of discovery and scoping, the clinical validation, then the pivotal studies, and then go through market authorization and regulatory, and the last stage is then go to market distribution.
Yeah.
And that's the competency and the team we have been building out.
And how do you tend to work with pharma then on that subject? Because you mentioned already your partnership with Pfizer. Are you always seeking partnership with traditional pharma? Do you think potentially in some areas you might compete with pharma? How do you view that model?
Mm-hmm. This model has been evolving, but so we are B2B, so we work B2B2C. So we team up with pharma that share our vision that there is this tremendous room for improvement and value creation in better engaging patients and payers as well. And we do that and we have multiple pharma partnerships, and we do this on a few different levels. In many instances, it is combination therapy. So the pharmaceutical companies have done amazing things in many instances, creating these pharmacological interventions that I used to practice internal medicine, so I'm very impressed by that. And if you have a potent pharmacological intervention with a digital tool, it can be a digital companion, it can be registered as software as a medical device, and there are some nuances around that, obviously. Then in many instances 1 + 1 is 3 or even 4.
Yeah.
For all involved, the patient, the provider, and the pharma company, and ultimately the payer as well.
Yeah.
So we work with pharma on that front, and then we are seeing more and more pharma companies realizing that digital therapeutics are a new form of interventions. We have the traditional pharma molecules, and then we have the biologics, which was a breakthrough, and then all the surgical interventions, obviously, and then other types of interventions. And digital therapeutics is now in the same category. So that has turned the spotlight, and within pharma, you have a lot of forward-thinking professionals that are pushing their organizations into prescribe digital therapeutics. It's only a matter of time when that will have a larger share of the market, if you will.
Yeah.
And this is also being confirmed, not being, but being. It's in the process of getting confirmed by the payers. Because if you're a payer and you look at, I want an intervention, what evidence, what outcome will it bring? And ultimately, payers are agnostic if it's a surgical intervention or a biological or pharma or digital. They just want more, and if we use the payer language, it's quality of life, adjusted life years, basically.
Yeah. So in terms of your partnerships with pharma companies, what is it they get from that? What's the benefit to a pharma company from working with Sidekick?
The value that we are able to unlock in the collaborations with pharma are on multiple levels. So first of all, our approach at Sidekick is to have to stand on this solid ground of having a proven track record, improving health outcomes and adherence. That is absolutely key, because you need that to create partnerships with all the key stakeholders. and be it, key opinion leaders in the markets we are operating in with pharma, the patient advocacy groups, healthcare providers, and even just to gain traction within these large pharma organizations.
Yeah.
And once you are there, then you can start unlocking value in terms of strengthening drug differentiation and competitive advantage, improve pharma access to patients and HCPs, and support just general pharma strategic digital positioning. And then once you have that, then the partnerships can start like unlocking the true potential, which is creating value from the data in every sense of the word. So we are working with our pharma partners and payers as well to improve treatments, improve outcomes. As an example, through mining the data, we can find and provide actionable insights that advance health outcomes, like using predictive analytics on adherence, on disease flares and disease worsening. There are these possibilities to collect different types of data, like health economic and outcome research data, to seek higher reimbursement, especially if you're like co-marketing of drug and the digital intervention. In drug studies, you can simply augment primary and secondary endpoints, and hence get better outcomes and higher reimbursement. We're also working in selected markets with pharma on prescribed digital therapeutics, just adding revenue streams and entering revenue share agreements on that. And the list goes on and on. Quite a lot of questions we are helping to get answers to, like when it comes to real world data, like filling knowledge gaps, what happens, as an example, during the induction period of a drug in the real world, like post phase 4, basically. So yeah, we can create synergies on many levels.
Yeah, and I guess different partners see value in different areas, as you've outlined there.
That is correct.
Yeah, very good. And I mean, do you think we'll get to a point where the concept of just giving somebody a medicine is kind of redundant? It will always be at least a medicine plus some kind of digital therapeutic?
A lot of the work that we are doing is following that vision. We have counterparts within pharma that say precisely this. Their vision is that a new medication will not come out with a digital companion. And that fits really well into, when it comes to strengthening drug differentiation and competitive advantage, obviously, for pharma. Also, it's just improving pharma access to both patients and health providers. It has the additional benefit of improving workflows, HCP workflows, and even, on the opposite end, increasing patient access to healthcare providers. So it's there are many stakeholders in this ecosystem, but the picture is getting clearer and clearer.
And you mentioned their positioning. Obviously, drug positioning happened some years prior to launch, often around kind of phase 2. So, when you're partnering with pharma companies, what's the right point for them to engage with? Are you talking around phase 2 trials? Are you talking earlier?
Mm-hmm. We have been partnering with pharma in different phases of the development phase. We have partnerships, where we engage already in phase 2, leading to phase 3. There is a lot of need for differentiation and competitive advantage, from registration and beyond. So these are all things that are evolving rapidly, but this digital layer is needed in all of the phases.
Yeah.
And of course, this is a multivariate, right? Different TAs with different, pharmacological molecules with different primary and secondary endpoints and different needs. Some medication is quite tricky when it comes to administration, like subcutaneous, self-administered drugs, right? Easier said than done for everybody. And if you take low health literacy, low health motivation, and into that and stir it in that pot, you will not get good results without a digital companion.
Yeah. And how do patients get access to the Sidekick technology? Is it something that's prescribed by the doctor along with the medicine?
Mm-hmm. This is a thing that we are working on every day, almost all day. This is again an area that is evolving very fast. It is not fully mature, so these distribution models are not fully mature. And this is, when we workshop with our payer partners and pharma partners, this is an important topic. But the potential is there because we are not bound by being prescribed by medical doctors like most drugs are. You can have other routes. But to answer your question, yes, the solution is distributed by healthcare providers. It can be your doctor or your nurse or your care manager if it's the payer, right? That is the most obvious traditional way to do this. What we have been doing is also like connecting the dots a bit within the ecosystem. So engaging the patient advocacy groups.
Yeah.
I love this approach. They kind of exist to boost engagement, awareness, and quality of life of their members, right? We have had successful collaborations all over the world with patient advocacy groups, helping us with the distribution.
Yeah.
And for us, it's been word of mouth also, luckily. It's kind of kudos to the product team, obviously, on that. And then there are other models that are emerging, like more direct to consumer in collaboration with the partners. But we see with the rise of reimbursement for digital therapeutics, distribution will be key. And that is one of the reasons why we are so happy with our pharma partnerships. Who has been optimizing distribution through HCPs to patients for the past 150 years.
Yeah, they know that space.
They know how, and they have their legs on the ground. So again, this disruptive technology is a very good fit into those excellent channels that are already there.
And you've mentioned the payer a few times and reimbursement, which is, as you know, is critical with digital health as it is elsewhere. So do you think there could be a point where, if you look at the UK, for example, NICE might evaluate your technology and say, we recommend use of this for cost effectiveness reasons? Is that a path you're exploring?
That is a path we're actively exploring, yes. And the foundation for that is the data, right? The clinical evidence, and so if you have the data, if you can show the outcome impact, then you can, and we include in all of our studies like HEOR, health economics and outcome research data in parallel, and we do measurements on workflow improvement. But if you have the data, then when clinical guidelines are revisited, what is recommended, what has an impact, and what is relatively safe. There's no liver toxicity with using Sidekick.
Yeah, you'd hope not.
It could get into a better shape than you thought you would.
Yeah.
Because you're motivated. No, I'm just joking here. It's just on a light note, but that is a very natural progression into clinical guidelines.
Yeah.
And the key opinion leaders we are working with, in some instances, are in these clinical guideline advisory groups. So I think, and this is early stage, but digital interventions of some sort.
So kind of watch this space, I think, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. And I mean, clearly you've seen some great success. I'm sure it's not all been plain sailing. What's been the biggest challenge or the biggest failure in your journey so far?
Where to start? in alphabetical order.
I think anybody in your position has quite a few to report on. But maybe what's kind of surprised you as being the hardest thing that maybe didn't expect to be hard.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Luckily, though, the potential of this and the small wins along the way have always kind of outshined the failures.
Yeah.
But one, I'd say, if we call it a brick wall, we encountered 8 or 9 years ago, was that our initial hypothesis around healthcare providers engaging with a digital solution like this was much less mature than we thought.
Yeah.
Because we were working as medical doctors, right? We had the support of it was really hard to find a nurse or a medical doctor that didn't think that this was a great idea, in the cafeteria, right? And we did the initial studies, everything went great, and then it was time to implement with the healthcare provider. And then the plot thickened a bit, with especially with these national payers and these fixed ways of working that have not changed since the days of Florence Nightingale.
Yeah.
Set up the existing system. So that was a challenge, and I'm sure many digital therapeutics entrepreneurs have hit this wall.
Yeah.
And so we bypassed that. We took a step back and we thought, this model of, and even if you engage the executives at that time over very large hospitals, they were just not ready. Rules, regulations, procurement issues, lawyers.
Yeah, you're almost waiting for health systems to catch up, aren't you? Really?
Yeah, and they haven't still caught up. Not in our part of the world, but the interesting thing is that we are sensing traction from other parts of the world where that have been emerging in terms of providing healthcare.
Yeah.
And have not had this robust brick and mortar hospital setting, people in a white coat meeting patients, that are kind of leapfrogging over that stage in a sense.
Yeah.
It will be really interesting to see if the Western world, where we mostly operate in the US, Canada, Europe, or other parts of the world, some Asian and African countries, come to find which HCPs will be faster to adopt this at scale.
Yeah.
But
you could almost leapfrog the existing systems, I guess.
Yeah, because the evidence is there, the efficacy is there, the cost savings are there. But again, this will take some time. And at Sidekick, we are not in this alone. There is a a fantastic push in the direction of, again, improving quality of life and outcomes through this, from our pharma partners, from the payers, on the healthcare provider. And being a healthcare provider, I know the need is there. So kind of the push is from all directions.
Yeah.
Eventually the HCP systems will change.
Yeah.
Or be left behind.
Yeah.
And somebody else starts providing healthcare.
So as you look forward then, if you look at the next few years, and obviously achieved an awful lot so far, what are you most looking forward to? Are there particular milestones in your mind that you're thinking, really want to see where we get to with that?
Mm-hmm. A number of things. I mentioned in the beginning, I also have a background in research, so I kind of look at the world through that lens. So we have some very exciting randomized controlled trials in the pipeline. So seeing the data turning out from that is very exciting. It's also super interesting how rapidly things are accelerating now. In terms of adoption, these huge organizations, the payers, the pharmas, many of them are getting up to speed. Oil tankers, large ships, but once they start sailing, they can get good speed. So those collaborations and partnerships are really inspiring and rewarding. And then, sooner rather than later, I think we will see the adoption at scale.
Yeah. It feels like things are really accelerating at the moment with digital health. And maybe COVID has been part of that. It's something I often talk about, but it feels like systems are starting to change.
Yeah. And again, like to the roots of Sidekick, why are we doing this? The original idea is to impact health outcomes at scale. And hopefully reaching more people than possible, meeting 18 to 25 patients a day for 15-minute visits. Hopefully we can touch more patients and people's lives.
And it must be great to see you achieving that kind of initial hypothesis and starting to see things move.
So truly exciting times now. And again, we're not in this alone. The pharma partners are there, the payers are there, and last but not least, we have a very strong team at Sidekick now, and we are hiring. If I'm able to put in an advertisement on that, so some fantastic individuals from the IT world, from research, from medical, from behavioral science, from business development, from regulatory. We're all trying to crack this.
We can do a recruitment plug. So if anybody watching this is interested in working for Sidekick, go and take a look at the website and get in touch. My last question then, Sam, this has been great to hear your journey and where things are going. Just coming back to kind of what you've learned on this journey, kind of, is there one bit of advice you'd give to other budding health entrepreneurs trying to move into this space? Because as you say, you've seen some great success, but it's not easy. There's a lot of learnings along the way. What advice would you offer?
That's a very good question. A couple of things come to mind. So first, acknowledging that this is a different journey from, as an example, working at the hospital or a large company of some sort, and it is challenging at times. You have to make decisions with limited data. That's what some people find very challenging, and by nature it is. But then again, once you kind of start seeing how things kind of start to grow, it is very rewarding. So one advice is that, hang in there through the tough times.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a broad and general advice.
Be persistent. Yeah.
Yeah. And nurture the team from day one. And I'm just reflecting on things I've seen in other companies, and so if the team is not aligned with the same vision, it will break apart at one point.
Yeah.
At one point in time or the other. I would say, just this general advice. And then you can't, every dream is different. Like, what is the problem you want to solve, in what way? So it's kind of hard to give general advice on how senior your developers should be, or something like that.
Yeah, no, but I get what you're saying. The general advice is, be persistent, keep going, get the right team around you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, Sam, it's been fantastic to hear a bit more about your journey with Sidekick Health. Thank you for sharing, and appreciate your time.
Likewise, been a pleasure. Thank you.